My name is Adrian Keats, and according to the hiring paperwork I signed at 6:12 this morning, I am now a seasonal fire lookout for the Greenwood National Forest. That same paperwork required me to initial a page titled Behavioral Compliance Protocols. A page containing 9 rules I thought were a joke until about 30 minutes ago. The job didn't seem complicated. Sit in a tower, report smoke, stay alert, and try not to go insane from isolation. I figured it would be the perfect escape after losing my apartment and my partner in the same month. A chance to disappear into the trees and reset. The supervisor who picked me up from the trailhead, Ranger Dalka, barely said 10 words during the 3-hour drive up. He looked like a man built out of fatigue. Deep lines around the mouth, eyes that darted without focusing, hands that kept tapping a rhythm against the steering wheel as if he were listening to music that wasn't playing. The first real thing he said to me came when the fire lookout tower finally came into view through the dense morning fog. "You follow the rules," he muttered, tightening his grip on the wheel. "All of them. Every minute." I tried to joke. "Is this like those horror stories online? Creepy rules in the woods?" He didn't laugh, didn't even blink. "They're not creepy," he said. "They're necessary." I didn't ask again. The tower was older than I expected. An elevated cabin of weather-beaten timber, its windows fogged with condensation despite the crisp cold. No cell service. No road access except the ranger's truck once a week. A radio, a logbook, a pair of binoculars, and emergency rations lined the interior. Everything felt too still, like the building itself was holding its breath. Dalka walked me through the rules one more time, slower this time, as though expecting me to memorize them immediately. Lock the tower door at 4:33 p.m. every day. Not earlier. Not later. Do not acknowledge voices calling from below the tower after dusk. Even if they sound familiar, if you see a second tower light in the forest at night, radio it in immediately and do not look at it again. Should you hear footsteps on the stairs past midnight, remain seated and keep your eyes shut until the noise stops. Never watch the tree line through binoculars for more than 30 seconds at a time. If you spot someone walking the old service road, verify they cast a shadow before addressing them. When logging smoke sightings, describe only what you see, not what you think you see. At sunrise, check the ground beneath the tower. If you notice footprints that aren't yours, do not mention them on the radio. If you wake up and find the tower door unlocked, leave immediately and walk due east until you reach the ranger station. Do not look back, no matter what you hear. They didn't feel funny anymore. They felt like warnings from someone who had watched too many coworkers disappear. When I asked why the door must be locked specifically at 4:33 p.m., he just said, "Because that's when things start shifting." That didn't clarify anything. He left at 1:15 p.m. sharp, telling me he'd radio check at 6 and that I should settle in, stay alert, and don't test the rules. For the next hour, I unpacked, explored, and tried convincing myself that my nerves were just first-day jitters. Nothing about the forest outside seemed dangerous. Greenwood was dense and sprawling, yes, but the kind of beautiful that made you forget the world existed somewhere beyond the pines. Sunlight spilled through the branches in golden shafts, and even the wind sounded calm. Around 2:40 p.m., I started hearing it. Something faint tapping under the floorboards. Probably a squirrel, I told myself. Or maybe the tower expanding in the warm air. Wood does that, right? By 3:10 p.m., the tapping grew into a slow scrape. A drag. The kind of noise that comes from something deliberate, not random. I walked around the cabin, leaning down, pressing my ear to the floor. Scrape. Pause. Scrape. I backed away. At 3:30 p.m., the scrape stopped. Completely. So suddenly it made the silence ring in my ears. At 4:15 p.m., I moved toward the tower door. The lock was old and stiff, the metal cold against my fingers. My watch ticked loudly in the stillness. I kept staring at the door window, half convinced something would be staring back. 4:31. 4:32. The second hand felt like it was dragging. When it hit 4:33, I turned the deadbolt. No sooner had the lock clicked than something pressed softly against the other side of the door. Not a knock, more like a curious testing push, the sound of weight shifting against wood. I froze, hands still on the latch. There was another small push, then a third. Slow, gentle. No animal I knew moved like that. I stepped back, heart trying to hammer its way out of my ribs. Something whispered from outside. Not a voice, not words, more like breath trying to form a shape. I stood still until it faded. I didn't move again until the sun lowered behind the treetops and the forest fell into that strange bluish twilight that always feels too quiet for its own good. At 6 p.m. sharp, the radio crackled to life. Dalka's voice, Tower 3 status. I swallowed. All normal. A lie. There was a pause. Long enough to make me uncomfortable. You locked the door? Yes. Good. Don't open it for anything. Night starts early here. As if on cue, the trees outside shifted in the wind, but the movement didn't sound like branches. It sounded like something brushing against the trunk, circling the tower. I didn't say a word about the noises. Not yet. I wasn't ready to admit they were real. But as the last of the light slipped away, I realized something that hadn't crossed my mind until then. The rule about not acknowledging voices. The one that said, even if they sound familiar. I had no idea whose voice I'd expected to hear out there, but I hadn't expected it to sound like my own. The first real sign that something was wrong came at 7:12 p.m., when the radio clicked on by itself. Not the usual crackle of someone keying their mic, but a clean, soft click, like a button being pressed deliberately. I was writing in the logbook at the time, jotting down a perfectly ordinary sunset, when the noise snapped my head up. Tower 3. The voice wasn't Dalka's. It wasn't anyone I'd heard on the frequency. It had a flatness to it, emotionless but trying to mimic cadence. Report visibility. I didn't answer. Something about the tone made my skin crawl. It sounded like someone reading lines phonetically, as if they'd only recently learned how human voices worked. Tower 3, it repeated. Visibility. The air felt too warm inside the cabin, like something was breathing behind me. I kept my back against the desk and forced out a calm, steady voice. Identify. A beat. 2. Then, visibility. Same tone. Same rhythm. No call sign, no ranger ID. My hand hovered over the power switch, but I didn't touch it. Something told me turning it off might invite something worse. Before I could decide what to say, the radio clicked off on its own. The forest outside was so dark it looked like a wall. A thick, impenetrable curtain made of nothing but pine silhouettes and the occasional twitch of branch tips. The lantern light inside the tower felt too bright, too vulnerable. I lowered it, letting shadows fill the corners of the room until I could breathe again. By 8 p.m., the scraping under the floor started again, this time in a slow, dragging circle, around and around the tower's base. I kept reminding myself the foundations were solid beams several feet off the ground. Anything underneath would have to be either crawling or impossibly tall. Neither thought comforted me. The sound wasn't random either, kept a pace, pattern. 3 drags, pause, 3 drags, like someone walking in a loop. At 8:27, something new happened. A faint glow appeared between the trees, far out, maybe a mile. At first, I thought it was a hiker's headlamp, but then it pulsed, brightened, shifted higher, then lower, then higher again, like it was looking around. My first instinct was to grab the binoculars. I raised them, looked, and stopped. Rule 5. Don't watch the tree line for more than 30 seconds. I counted in my head. 1, 2, 3. The light wasn't steady. It flickered like a candle flame, but too uniform, too controlled. As I watched, the glow moved between the trunks, weaving in a slow S-shaped path that didn't make sense for any human or animal I knew. At 25 seconds, the light brightened abruptly. At 27, It turned toward me. I dropped the binoculars so fast they nearly cracked on the floor. The light disappeared instantly, like it snapped off. I stood completely still, breath tight in my chest. The only sounds were the occasional groaning creak of the tower's supports and my own heartbeat buzzing in my ears. At 9:03 p.m., footsteps sounded on the stairs. Heavy ones, slow, measured, the kind that come from someone climbing with purpose, each step deliberate enough to feel through the floorboards. I backed into the far corner of the cabin, pulse a sharp drumbeat against my temples. The footsteps reached the landing just beneath the door and stopped. Silence, then a soft knock. 3 evenly spaced taps. My throat dried instantly. Another knock, harder. I know you're in there. The voice was mine. Every vowel, every pitch, every pause. My own voice, spoken from the wrong side of the door. I didn't move. I barely breathed. You forgot something, it said. I squeezed my eyes shut. Rule 2. Don't acknowledge voices calling from below after dusk. It wasn't below anymore, but I understood the meaning. Do not respond. Do not engage. Keep still. Keep quiet. I brought it back, it added, and then something slid beneath the door. Just the tip of something. Long, pale, thin. Not a hand. Not a branch. Something in between, like fingers stretched too far. The thing wiggled once, as if testing the air. I stepped back so fast my heel hit the survival pack and sent it tumbling. The noise echoed louder than it should have in the cabin, and whatever was outside reacted immediately. A scraping sound dragged across the door, up and down, like nails trying to find purchase. Then the footsteps resumed. Down the stairs this time, slowly, softly, longer than any descent should take. When I finally dared to inhale again, the forest had gone dead silent. Not a single insect, not a single gust of wind, just the soft hum of the tower lantern and the faint trembling in my legs. At 9:40 p.m., the radio crackled again. This time it really was Dalka. Tower 3, you still up? I grabbed the mic like it was a lifeline. Yeah, something's happening out here. What kind of something? I hesitated. How do you explain that the forest is trying out your voice like a borrowed coat? I saw a light, I said carefully, moving through the trees. The pause that followed wasn't reassuring. Did you look at it for long? No. Did you use the binoculars? Yes. Another pause. Longer. Then listen to me very carefully, he said. For the rest of the night, you do not look at the tree line again. Not with your eyes. Not with anything. Understood. What is it? It's not my job to tell you what it is, he said sharply. It's your job to follow the rules. You broke one tonight, so stay where you are. Do not leave the tower. Do not answer the door. And Adrian, yeah, if you hear your voice again, don't assume the door is the only place it can come from. The radio clicked off. Something shifted behind me, and I realized he was right. The voice didn't need the door anymore. I didn't turn around at first. Couldn't. Something about the air behind me had changed. Thicker, charged, like the room wasn't the same shape anymore. The lantern flame trembled though there was no draft. My hands wouldn't stop shaking. I forced myself to inhale, then exhale, slow and quiet, as if my own breathing might tip something off. The scraping under the floor stopped at some point. I hadn't noticed until now. The silence pressed harder than the noise ever did. Then it came. A soft inhale behind my left ear. Not a person's breath. Not an animal's. It was like someone was practicing how to breathe. I clenched my fists and shut my eyes. The rules weren't explicit about this, but every instinct screamed the same thing. Don't look. Don't give it shape. Something shifted, fabric brushing the floorboards or maybe skin. A faint rhythm like someone pacing in tiny steps. My heartbeat rattled inside my chest, loud enough to feel in my ribs. Then my own voice whispered, "You saw the light too long." I froze. It wasn't coming from behind me. It wasn't coming from anywhere physical. It sounded like it was forming inside my head, vibrating against the inside of my skull. "You shouldn't have watched it," it said again, a little clearer this time. "Now it knows your shape." I gripped the edge of the desk until my knuckles cracked. "I'm not talking to you. You already are." A weight pressed on the floorboards near the center of the room. The tower creaked, but not from wind. This was something shifting its weight. My eyes flicked to the window for a split second, and I instantly regretted it. In the reflection, something tall stood behind me. Too tall. Its outline was wrong, narrow where it should be broad, elongated where it shouldn't be. The lantern light bent around it instead of lighting it, like it soaked color out of the air. It had no face, or maybe too many. The reflection kept changing, flickering between shapes that looked like mine, then back to nothing. I snapped my eyes shut, hard. The boards groaned again as it stepped closer. "You left your shadow at the tree line," my voice whispered from the reflection. It picked it up. I didn't know what that meant, but my body reacted before my mind did. I lunged for the emergency blanket, thin, crinkly, reflective, and swung it around me in a panic. Not exactly protection, but it felt like something between me and whatever was behind me. The thing paused. The room went still. Then it made a sound I haven't heard from any living in this world or any nightmare I've had since. A shuddering inhale mixed with a rattle of wet leaves, like a forest trying to breathe. It didn't touch me, didn't grab me. It just backed away. The floor vibrated with each step. Then nothing. I stayed wrapped in that emergency blanket for almost a full minute before I opened my eyes again. The cabin looked the same, empty, but the reflection in the lantern glass wasn't mine. It stared at me with a shape wearing my outline but with limbs slightly too long, like a puppet strung wrong. Then it flickered and vanished. My legs gave out. I dropped to my knees, breath shaking out in short bursts. Before I could collect myself, the radio clicked on a third time. This time it didn't crackle or distort. It sounded like a clean studio microphone somewhere far too close to my ear. "Adrian," Dalka said, "listen to me carefully. This part is important." The panic in my chest softened. Someone real. Someone human. "I'm here," I whispered into the mic. "You can't let it inside. Do you understand? You can't let it finish learning your voice or your shape. Don't answer it. Don't ask questions. Don't acknowledge what it says. Whatever mimics you wants you to give it permission." "What does that mean?" "Don't speak when it speaks. Don't open the door unless you absolutely have to. And Adrian, the sunrise rule, the 9th rule, ignore it." My stomach dropped. "What?" "You heard me. Do not follow that last one. It wasn't meant for you." "But it says." "I know what it says, but that rule doesn't apply anymore. Something changed last season. We didn't rewrite the protocol in time. If the door's unlocked at sunrise, you stay. You keep it locked. Don't go east. Don't go anywhere." "Why not?" "Because the one that waits on the road knows the path east. And it knows rangers always follow the rules. You walk that way, it will walk with you." Something clattered outside, metal tapping wood. My blood iced instantly. I knew that sound. The lock. I stood so fast the chair fell over behind me. The door handle turned once. Slow. Testing. A soft click followed. Then the sound of the deadbolt sliding up. Unlocking. "Dalka," I whispered, barely audible. "It unlocked itself." "Stay away from the door," he hissed. "Back away slowly. Do not look out the windows." I stepped backward, each move careful, controlled, even though every cell in my body screamed at me to run. My heel hit something on the floor, my dropped flashlight. The door creaked. A gap opened. Just an inch. Just enough for a sliver of black forest air to seep inside. The tapping on the wood increased, frantic now, like impatient fingers. A voice seeped through the crack. Not mine this time. Dalka's. "Adrian," it whispered. "You're safe now. Come outside. I jerked forward, mic in hand. Dalka, are you outside my tower? No, he said firmly. Stay inside. That's not me. The voice outside repeated, louder. Adrian, come outside. The real Dalka shouted in my ear, don't move. The door pushed a fraction further open. I grabbed the emergency axe by the window, hands trembling, and slammed the door shut with all my weight. The impact shook the entire tower. The thing outside screamed, not like a person, not like anything natural. A sound made of static and broken mimicry. I threw the deadbolt back into place. Silence dropped, but it wasn't gone. Something leaned its weight against the door. Slowly, patiently, the radio crackled once more. Adrian, Dalka said quietly, this night isn't close to over. The weight against the door didn't move for a long time. It pressed steadily, like something was leaning its entire shape against the wood. Just enough for the hinges to groan, but not enough to force entry. I didn't dare move, didn't dare breathe too loudly. I stood with my back to the opposite wall, the emergency axe raised, every muscle locked and trembling. 10:14 p.m., it exhaled. Not a sigh, an imitation of one. A long, shaky release of air, as though it had heard humans breathe out after crying and thought that was how you show exhaustion. Then the pressure vanished. No footsteps, no retreating sound, just absence. I kept the axe raised for nearly 2 full minutes before my arm gave out and dropped it to my side. The lantern flame flickered low on the table, casting warped shadows that stretched and crawled across the walls. I hated the shadows almost as much as I hated the silence. The tower felt too small, too fragile. Like one wrong sound would shatter it. The radio clicked again. I need you to tell me exactly what happened, Dalka said. His voice was thin, distant, strained. He wasn't whispering. He sounded like he was trying not to shake. It unlocked the door, I said, voice barely coming out. It used your voice, pushed its way in. You didn't open it. That's what matters. A breath on his end. Listen to me, Adrian. I can't get up there tonight. The roads are compromised. What does that mean? They're not roads right now, he said flatly. Just don't leave the tower. I pressed a hand to my forehead. Sweat clung to my hairline even though the night was freezing. What the hell is this place? There was a pause. A long one. You're not the first lookout, he said. Something inside me twisted. What happened to the last one? Another pause, longer, heavier. You saw the records in the drawer? No. You didn't open it? No. Good. Don't. Footsteps sounded outside. But this time they didn't come from the stairs. They came from the roof. A slow creak. A heavy step. Then another. The old metal beams groaned under a shifting weight. Dust drifted down from the ceiling, catching the lantern light like falling ash. Dalka, I whispered. It's on the roof. I know, he said quietly. Tower 3 always gets the climber. The what? Stay away from the windows. Don't let it see you. It learns faster when it can map your movement. Another step above me. The nails on the roof scraped like metal dragging across metal. Something pressed downward, testing like it was checking whether the roof would hold. Adrian, Dalka said, sometimes it taps through the roof vents. If you hear your voice coming through the stovepipe, do not answer. Do not look up it. Do not cover it. What happens if I do? You don't want to know. I backed away from the stovepipe automatically, even though it had been dormant for hours. My heartbeat seemed to echo off the walls. A low, vibrating hum buzzed through the roof, like something was dragging its throat across the metal. Then it spoke. Not in my voice this time, in dozens. Chorus of wrong. It sounded like recordings of different people layered together. Men, women, children, all speaking at once, overlapping but synced in pitch. We see you. We see you. We see you. My stomach lurched. I pressed my back against the far wall. The voices shifted, rearranged, and reformed into one single voice. Mine. We can come in if you want. I shook my head violently even though it couldn't see me. You just have to say yes. The roof creaked as it moved closer to the vent. No, I whispered. Yes. It whispered back immediately, copying the breath, the pitch, the shape. Yes, yes. Come in, yes. Then the stovepipe rattled. Something started sliding down inside, slow, scraping metal, bending edges as it forced itself through. The pipe bulged in the center like something was pressing outward, straining the thin metal walls. Dalka, it's coming through the vent. Back away, he snapped. Get to the trapdoor. There is no trapdoor. The one under the supply crate. I shoved the crate aside with my foot, heart slamming against my ribs. A small wooden hatch lay beneath it, barely big enough for a person to squeeze into. I grabbed the handle and pulled. The hinges squealed, dust billowing up. A ladder led down into a dark cavity between the tower supports. You'll be safer down there, Dalka said. It can't mimic angles below it. It needs height. That makes no sense. Nothing about this place makes sense. The stovepipe cracked, an awful, splitting tear as the metal gave way. A pale, thin limb pushed through, jointed wrong, bending in too many places. It felt blindly through the air, fingers unfurling like softened bone. I didn't hesitate. I climbed down into the hatch, pulling it shut above me right as something hit the main floor with a wet, heavy thud. The space beneath the tower was cold, tight, barely lit by slivers of lantern glow leaking through the floorboards. Dust coated everything. I crouched low, wedged between beams and the ladder, trying not to breathe too loudly. Above me, something moved across the floor, slow, dragging, searching. A distorted version of my voice hummed a broken tune, like it was testing sound. Another voice, one I didn't recognize, layered beneath it, a cracked, trembling whisper. I held perfectly still. The floorboards bowed slightly above my head, groaning under weight. A pale finger slipped between two planks, reaching downward. Another finger appeared beside it. Then another. The searching hand hovered inches from my face. Adrian? It whispered in a trembling half-voice. Half mine, half someone else. Let us learn. I pressed both hands over my mouth. The hand froze, then snapped back up in one sudden motion, retreating with a speed no human limb should have. Something slammed into the floor above me as if thrown. A heavy thump, followed by a shriek of frustration. High and jagged, not quite human. The radio crackled in my pocket. Adrian, Dalka's voice came through. Stay down there. Do not come up. Even if it sounds like I'm up there. Even if it sounds like you're up there. I pulled the radio close. How long do I stay down here? There was a long, shaky breath on the other end. Until it gets bored, he said quietly. And they never get bored quickly. Above me, the thing began pacing again. And this time, it was laughing. The laughter above me didn't sound like a single creature. It warped, stretching thin, breaking into pieces, then snapping back into a pitch that almost sounded human. Almost. It paced across the floor, tapping in uneven rhythms, scraping its limbs against the wood like it was testing how each surface responded. Every time I shifted even slightly, the pacing halted. Then something pressed its weight directly over the hatch. Not stepping, not walking, just lowering itself, flattening against the floorboards as though trying to feel for me through the wood. The planks bowed beneath it. Dust drifted down like falling snowfall. I held the radio tight against my chest, terrified any sound would draw its attention. My breath came in short bursts I tried to control, inhaling through clenched teeth. After what felt like an hour, but my watch insisted was only 6 minutes, the creature rose again. This weight lifted, slow, deliberate, and then it began moving toward the opposite side of the tower. Something else shifted with it. A second set of steps. Soft, uncertain, almost human. My skin prickled. There hadn't been a second thing before. A faint voice, shaky, broken, spoke above me. Help! Please help! The voice was familiar, but I couldn't place it. A young man? A teenager? It sounded raw, hoarse, like someone exhausted beyond comprehension. Then I realized exactly who it sounded like. The last lookout. The one Dalka wouldn't talk about. My stomach twisted. Hello? The voice whimpered. Is someone down there? Please, I can't see. I can't get out. Keeps copying me. It keeps. His voice broke into a sob. For a moment, the creature stopped moving entirely. The silence throbbed in my ears. Then the second voice continued, quieter. Help me. You have to help. Open the hatch. Please. Just, please. I squeezed the radio so tightly my hand went numb. Dalka? I whispered into the mic. There's someone else up there. No, Dalka said immediately, his voice cracking. No, there isn't. I hear him. That's not him. Adrian, listen to me. Once it mimics someone long enough, it can do more than sounds. Can piece together memories, fears, apologies. Don't respond to it. But what if? Don't respond. The force in his voice stunned me into silence. Above me, the trembling human voice shifted, not in tone but in weight. The words repeated, but the sentences didn't match the desperation anymore. They became curious. Why won't you open the door? It asked softly. My lungs froze. Why won't you help me? The words were identical, but the cadence wasn't. It was studying how the human version had sounded, sorting which parts worked, experimenting. The pacing resumed, now 2 sets of steps moving in erratic circles. Then one of them knelt, would creaked above my head. The boards flexed so low a splinter poked through. Adrian. My own voice whispered, but hushed, conspiratorial, as though crouching next to my ear. If you come up now, I'll stop it. I'll keep you safe. No. I kept my head down, forehead pressed to the wood beam. If I made one sound, it would hear the tremor in my breath. If I made one move, it would triangulate my body. The footsteps paused again, directly above me. I closed my eyes. Then the floorboard above my left hand popped upward. Just a millimeter, but enough. Enough to know it had found the right spot. A thin finger slipped through the crack, searching. I jerked my hand back instinctively, inhaling sharply through my teeth. The creature froze mid-motion. I felt the entire atmosphere shift. It knew exactly where I was now. The finger smoothed across the edge of the board with a tenderness that made my stomach flip. Then another finger. Then another. 3, 4. Too many joints, too soft to be bone. The wood began to lift. The whole hatch shuddered under the pressure of the thing above me. Dust poured down into my hair. My pulse thrashed like it was trying to rip free of my chest. The radio clicked. Adrian, Dalka whispered. If it starts lifting the boards, your only option is to move. Move where? I whispered back. There's nowhere. You're under Tower 3, he said. There's crawl space leading between the beams. You can move along the supports, but you have to do it without making sound. I looked at the narrow wooden beams stretching into the darkness beneath the floor. Sharp, rusted nails stuck out along the sides. The beams creaked under the tower's weight. The thing above me groaned as it lifted another board. A pale shape pressed downward, too formless and shifting to be flesh. I can't get far, I whispered. You don't need to get far, Dalka said. Just get out from under the hatch. You can't widen openings without weakening the structure. Follow the beams north. Slowly. No quick movements. The hatch creaked as the first board loosened enough to see a sliver of the cabin above. Something wet dripped through. I didn't think. I moved. Carefully. Quietly. I slid along the beam, inch by inch, my limbs trembling with the effort to stay still except for the slow crawl. Something brushed my jacket. cobwebs clinging to the underside of the cabin. Above, the creature paused again, sensing the shift. Then it dropped fully onto the hatch with a violent thud. The wood cracked, splintered. I pressed myself flat against the beam, heart hammering like gunfire. A hand, too wide, too thin, pressed through the widening split. Fingertips scraped the empty space where I had been seconds earlier. A soft, broken whisper floated down. "Adrian, why are you leaving me?" The voice wasn't mine, wasn't the last lookouts. It was someone else entirely, someone I'd never heard, someone it was still learning. The creature prowled across the upper floor again, angry now, frantic, knocking into walls, testing each floorboard, searching for the one that creaked, searching for the vibration of breath, searching for me. I kept crawling, slow, controlled, breath sealed in my chest. When I finally reached the far north beam, the radio buzzed once more. "Good," Dalka whispered. "Good. Stay there. Stay still. Don't go back until I tell you." The creature above paused. And then, for the first time since night began, it spoke a sentence fully formed, clearly spoken, in a voice I hadn't expected. Dalka's voice. I found him. My blood iced. The radio vibrated in my hand. Dalka's real voice spoke one word. "Run." The moment Dalka whispered run, every ounce of cold in my blood turned electric. I didn't think. I didn't breathe. I just moved. Slow enough not to shake the beams, quick enough that panic tripped over itself. Above me, the creature stopped completely. Silence. Not a pause. Not confusion. Something worse. It was listening. I pressed my body into the beam, willing myself to become weightless. The floorboards creaked above, faintly at first, then with a slow, rising pressure. Footsteps, but wrong, too soft, too even, like something lowering itself carefully into a hunter's crouch. Then Dalka's stolen voice spoke again, clearer this time. "He's under the north beam." I felt everything inside me seize. The beam under my hands suddenly felt exposed, naked under the tower's weight. The radio crackled again. Dalka's real voice, frantic now. "Adrian, that isn't me. Keep moving. Go. Now." The creature reacted instantly. Wood groaned as it shifted its full weight toward the far corner of the tower. I moved. Not slow this time. Not cautious. I ran across the beams. Balance be damned. Hands gripping the wooden supports, boots sliding against dust and grime. Nails bit into my palms. A loose board under my leg nearly snapped, and I barely caught myself before falling into the darkness below the tower. Above me, the creature lunged. It didn't walk, didn't climb. It moved like gravity didn't matter. Thud. This weight hit the floor above so hard dust exploded into my eyes. Light filtered through new cracks in the boards as something enormous crouched directly overhead. The whispering started again. Not one voice, not two, dozens, hundreds, fragments of sentences, copied breaths, exhalations played backward, dry sobs, laughter stitched into moans. It was cycling through every voice it had ever practiced, trying them on one by one like masks. I reached the far west beam and froze. The space ended. No other beams to crawl onto, not without dropping entirely beneath the structure. And if I dropped, every vibration would give me away instantly. The creature's voice, my voice, whispered from above. "Adrian, don't hide." I clutched the radio. "Dalka, I can't go further. The beams end." He didn't answer for 3 long seconds. "Then you wait," he said finally. "You wait until it moves. Don't breathe too loud. Don't shift. Can't drop through without collapsing the entire tower, and it doesn't want to lose structure. That's the only thing keeping you alive." "What does that mean?" "It needs the tower. It always has. I don't know why. Maybe it sees from height. Maybe it copies better from above. I only know that when the structure breaks, so do the rules." The creature scraped its limbs across the floorboards directly above me. Pale joints pushed between cracks and clusters, feeling, searching. The boards flexed under its weight. The thing shifted again. The entire cabin above tilted a fraction. Beams groaned in protest. It was testing what the tower could handle. The structure was old. Not made for this. Dalka's voice returned. Adrian, whatever you do, don't let it bring the tower down. Not planning to, I whispered sharply. I mean it. If the tower collapses, there's no boundaries anymore. You don't want to meet it on level ground. Above us, the laughter returned. Except this time, it was only one voice. Mine. Slow. Delighted. I can smell you. I felt sweat turn icy against my spine. The creature shifted its weight. Boards cracked. Another limb slid through, barely missing my face. The smell of damp earth and something sour filled the crawl space. I closed my eyes and willed myself to stop breathing. My chest throbbed in protest. The limb reached farther. It grazed my boot. I nearly screamed. The creature froze. I had made just enough movement for it to pinpoint me. The floorboards above me bulged downward violently. A full impact, like someone jumping hard on rotten wood. The nails around me rattled. The beam beneath me trembled. Another hit. Harder. Dust burst down in choking clouds. Then, the third hit. The beam shifted under my hands. I scrambled backward, gripping whatever part of the structure I could reach. My foot slipped on a rusted nail head, scraping my skin, but I didn't stop. The creature reared back for another slam. Adrian, move. Now. Dalka's voice wasn't from the radio. It came from outside the tower. Far below. Far away. Real. Human. I didn't think. I bolted along the beam, slamming my shoulder into the wooden support so hard pain shot down my arm. I reached the central column. Thick, reinforced, and clung to it, pressing myself flat. The creature slammed the floor where I had been again. With cracked, deep splintering cracks. If it hit one more time, the tower wouldn't survive. It's bringing it down, I whispered. The radio crackled. Then Dalka's real voice. I know. I'm trying to reach you. When the structure weakens, the boundaries shift. The rules will change. Stay under the center beam. Whatever you do, don't go near the outer edges. The creature's voice, my voice, sang softly above me. I won't let you fall. I'll catch you. The floor shuddered under its weight. The wood split in a jagged crack above me. A pale, jointed limb pushed through, dripping with something dark and sticky. The hole widened as the creature forced its head down. I saw it. Not clearly. Not fully. Just enough. A face forming out of nothing. My cheekbones. My jawline. My left eye blinking too slow, like it wasn't sure how eyelids worked. My mouth opening with a wet, stretching sound. Trying to smile. It whispered through a mouth learning how to make words. I'm almost perfect. The beam above my head groaned violently. Another slam would end everything. Then, a new sound. Loud. Jarring. A sharp mechanical blast from outside like a flare gun firing. The creature recoiled instantly, withdrawing its half-formed face back through the boards with a ripping hiss. Its limbs scrambled across the cabin floor. The entire tower shook as it retreated to the far corner, shrieking in a fractured chorus of voices. Dalka shouted from below the tower, Adrian, listen. This is your only window. But whatever he said next drowned under the creature's scream. And then the floor above me cracked down the center. The central floor beam split with a violent snap that echoed like a gunshot. Dust and splinters rained down in a choking wave. I threw my arms over my head as the entire cabin groaned above me, the structure shifting under its own weight. The creature shrieked, an awful layered sound that rattled the beams. It scrambled across the cabin, limbs slapping wood in a rapid, uneven rhythm. Then it stopped abruptly, as if it sensed the weakness in the floor and was deciding whether to exploit it. I clung to the central support beam beneath the hatch, holding my breath. The entire tower felt like it was breathing with me, each inhale a creak, each exhale a groan. Dalka's voice cut through the chaos from outside the tower. "Adrian, hold on. Do not climb out. Stay under the main support." His voice was real. It didn't echo or distort. It came from below, where no mimic could stand without collapsing the boundaries that held it to the structure. Above me, a pair of long, pale limbs slithered toward the widening crack in the floor. They curled around the broken boards, testing the structural limits, probing like fingers learning how to pry open a ribcage. Something wet dripped down onto the beam beside me. Not blood, not sap. Something darker, thicker, like the forest itself bleeding. The radio buzzed violently in my pocket. "Adrian," Dalka yelled. "When I say jump, jump south. There's a runoff ditch under that side. It's the only place it can't follow without losing form." "I can't jump," I hissed. "There's no footing down here. Then you'll have to make some." The creature's head shoved through the crack again, more complete than before. Its face was almost fully shaped now, wearing the contours of my features like a badly fitted mask. My left eyebrow was too high, my jawline uneven. Its eyes were mismatched, one perfectly copying mine, the other an empty socket swirling with darkness. It stared down at me through the floorboards, and smiled. The teeth didn't match. Some were human, some were not, some were too many. "Come out," it whispered in a voice almost indistinguishable from mine. "Let me see the rest." I shoved myself deeper against the central beam as the creature reached downward, its arm bending in places an arm shouldn't bend. Dalka's shout ripped through the radio again. "Adrian, now!" The flare gun fired again outside, a blinding flash of red-orange light spilling through the gaps in the tower's structure. The creature recoiled instantly, its skin rippling and bubbling as though the light itself burned it. It shrieked and retreated to the far corner of the cabin. The tower leaned, groaning dangerously. If I stayed under the beam and the tower collapsed, I'd be crushed. If I moved wrong, I'd give the creature my exact location again. If I hesitated, there wouldn't be a second chance. I sucked in air, planted my feet against the beam, and pushed off into the dark space below the south side of the cabin. The fall felt endless even though it was only about 8 feet. I hit the ground hard, rolling into the shallow runoff ditch beneath the tower. Mud soaked through my clothes instantly. My shoulder flared in pain. Above me, the creature roared, the first time it sounded truly furious. "Move!" Dalka shouted from somewhere to my right. "Get out from under it!" I scrambled through the ditch, slipping on wet stones, clawing through mud until I cleared the tower's footprint. Every breath tasted like iron and pine and something metallic I couldn't name. The moment I reached open ground, the entire tower lurched. The wood screamed. The beams split. The tower leaned in one direction, then the other, swaying like a drunk about to fall, and then collapsed. But not the way I expected. It didn't fall straight down. It crumpled inward, as if something inside it was pulling the structure toward itself instead of gravity pulling it down. Boards folded, beams cracked and curled, glass shattered like rain. A shriek, louder than thunder, burst from the collapsing wreck, shaking the trees. The forest itself seemed to recoil. Birds exploded from the canopy in a panic storm. The ground trembled beneath my palms. Then everything went still, too still. I lay there in the mud, trembling, staring at the smoking skeleton of what used to be Tower 3. The lantern light inside flickered once, sputtered, and died. Dalka rushed toward me from between the trees, flare gun still smoking in his hand. His chest heaved. His eyes were wide, not with fear, but with disbelief that I was still breathing. "Adrian," he gasped, grabbing my arm. "You need to move. Now." "Is it dead?" I whispered. He shook his head violently. "It doesn't die. It just resets." From beneath the collapsed tower, something shifted. Not loudly, not violently, just purposefully. With scraped, boards slid. Dalka yanked me backward hard enough to nearly dislocate my shoulder. "Don't look," he said through clenched teeth. "When it resets, it becomes something else. Something that doesn't copy voices anymore." "What does it copy?" I breathed. He didn't answer. From the collapsed wood, something rose. A shape, tall, wrong, smooth, featureless at first. But then, slowly, too slowly, details began forming on its surface like ripples in liquid. Arms, legs, shoulders, a head. A human silhouette. My silhouette. Perfect this time. No missing pieces. No uneven angles. No cracked voice. It stood still for 3 seconds. Then its head turned toward me with movements too precise to be natural. Its face, my face, folded into a perfect imitation. And it smiled without showing teeth. Dalka fired another flare at it. The creature didn't react. "Run," Dalka said, voice hollow. "It learned you completely." I staggered to my feet. "Where do we go?" "There's only one place it can't cross." He grabbed my arm and pulled me into the forest. "The line. We need to reach the boundary line." "Boundary line?" "You'll understand when we get there." Behind us, the creature began walking. No mimicry, no crawling, no scrambling, just walking. Smooth, patient, human, too human. But its footsteps made no sound. We ran. Branches whipped across my arms and tore at my sleeves. But the fear driving my legs made the pain feel distant, muted. The forest was too dark. So dark that the trees looked like black pillars rising from an ocean of shadow. The air felt heavier the deeper we went, as if the night itself was thickening around us. Dalka didn't slow, didn't speak, didn't look back. His grip on my arm was iron, pulling me through the undergrowth, over roots, down old game trails barely visible even in daylight. Behind us, the creature walked, not ran, not chased. It walked in the same steady rhythm, its footfalls completely silent, its breathing non-existent, its presence somehow louder than sound itself. Every time I dared glance back, I saw a pale silhouette between the trees. My silhouette, keeping pace effortlessly, not closing in, not falling behind, just present, watching. Dalka's voice finally broke the silence. "Don't look directly at it. It uses recognition." "What does that even mean?" "If you look at it and think it looks like you, that's consent." I felt bile rise in my throat. Consent for what? To finish what it started. The cold that washed through my stomach was absolute. We pushed deeper, the terrain sloping downward. The forest around us began to change. Older trees with wider trunks, moss carpeting everything, roots so gnarled they formed natural arches. The air smelled damp and old, like the inside of forgotten caves. It felt like we were running not through woods but into something ancient. "How far is the boundary line?" I gasped, lungs burning. "Close," Dalka said. "A few minutes." Another glance over my shoulder. A mistake. The creature had stepped closer, much closer, yet still walked at the same measured pace. Our sprint meant nothing to it. No matter how fast we ran, it was always the same distance behind, as if space itself bent cheerfully around its convenience. But something else had changed. Its face wasn't lit by moonlight anymore. It was glowing faintly, a pale, sickly bioluminescence, like fungus on a decaying log. My face, shining in the dark. "Stop looking at it," Dalka snarled. I whipped forward and nearly collided with him as the forest opened into a clearing. A wide, circular gap in the trees. No grass, no undergrowth. Only bare soil and a thin line of chalk-white stones forming a ring around the space, like someone had carefully placed them there decades ago. Dalka released my arm. "This is the line." I bent over, hands on my knees, trying to catch my breath. "What is it?" "A boundary," he said. "A line of breakage. It's not natural. Old rangers marked it after the first incident." "The first?" "We don't have time. He grabbed my shoulder and pulled me toward the center of the clearing. The ground felt strangely warm, too warm for a winter night. A faint hum vibrated through the soil, like the earth beneath us was alive. What happens if it steps inside? I asked. Dalka didn't look at me. Pray we don't find out. The creature reached the edge of the clearing. It stopped exactly at the stones. It didn't look at me. It didn't mimic. It just stood there, my perfectly mirrored form outlined in soft, deathly glow. Dalka whispered, "Don't move. Don't speak." A long moment of nothing passed. The forest behind the creature grew unnaturally silent. The air itself changed, pressure tightening like a storm was about to break. Then the creature lifted one foot, hovered it above the boundary line, and set it down. Nothing happened. No explosion, no scream, just silence. Dalka swore under his breath, a word with the weight of someone who knew this was worse than anything. "It crossed," he whispered. "It shouldn't be able to cross. The line always held." The creature stepped fully into the clearing, and all at once the hum in the soil stopped. The warmth bled away. The night grew colder than before, sharp, metallic cold. The creature tilted its head, watching us with a perfect replica of my expression. Its lips curled into a small smile, not mocking, not taunting, just pleasant, like it was happy to finally be here. "Dalka," I whispered. "What do we do?" He didn't answer. His hand drifted toward his flare gun, fingers trembling for the first time since I'd met him. The creature looked at the gun. Then it looked at me. Its voice, my voice, echoed softly around the clearing, but this time clear, confident, and eerily calm. "You shouldn't run," it said. "I didn't want to hurt the others." Others, plural. My stomach twisted. Dalka raised the flare gun with shaking hands. "Stay behind me." The creature didn't flinch. It didn't react at all. Its gaze stayed locked on me with a kind of admiration. "Come with me," it said. "You won't feel anything. Not like this." Dalka fired the flare. The burst of light scorched the clearing, turning night to day for a fraction of a second. The flare hit dead on. The creature's chest ignited in brilliant orange, and then the light bent sideways, snuffed out like a candle. The flare fell to the ground, extinguished. Dalka staggered backward, horrified. That should have worked. The creature stepped closer. I backed up so fast I nearly slipped in the dirt. "Dalka, what do we do now?" He grabbed my wrist. "We go. Now, run to the north trail. If we reach the split in the ridge, it can't follow." "Why?" "Because the ridge splits reality. It can't cross a fracture." I didn't know what that meant. I didn't ask. We ran. The creature didn't walk this time. It glided, silent and smooth, its edges blurring slightly in the dim light as though stepping through frames of reality that didn't match. Its voice, my voice, drifted behind us. "You can't outrun me anymore." A chill crawled up my spine. It was right. We weren't fast enough. The ridge split was too far. I looked at Dalka. "Tell me there's another rule." "There is," he said, breath shaking. My heart leapt. "What is it?" He swallowed hard, eyes locked ahead. "Don't let it touch you." Behind us, the creature whispered, "Touch." We ran harder than before, but the ground beneath us felt wrong, like the soil had softened into something that wasn't meant to hold human steps. Each stride sank deeper than it should have, swallowing the sound of our footfalls but not the terror behind them. The creature followed without effort. It didn't sprint. It didn't need to. The space between us didn't change. No matter how hard we pushed forward, it floated along the forest floor as though the world itself moved it. Dalka led us up a narrow slope. Roots tore through the dirt like gnarled fingers reaching for our ankles. I stumbled and nearly fell, but Dalka caught me, pulled me upright, and shoved me forward. "The ridge," he shouted. "Just keep going." I didn't see it yet. The trees were too thick, the night too dark. But I could feel something ahead, like the forest thinning, like the world bending in a direction it wasn't supposed to. Behind us, the creature laughed. Not a childish giggle, not a mimicry, a genuine laugh. My laugh. It was wrong hearing it come from behind me while I was running for my life. It sounded like a version of me that understood something I didn't. Something inevitable. "You're almost there," it said softly. "Don't be afraid." Dalka hissed. "Don't listen." I wasn't listening. I was barely conscious. Lungs burning, legs stiffening with cold that didn't belong to winter. The path opened suddenly. The ridge, a towering wall of stone split down the center by a narrow, jagged scar barely wide enough for a person. The crack looked unnatural, like something had forced the rock apart from the inside centuries ago. A cold wind funneled through the opening, the kind that didn't match the still forest behind us. The air tasted metallic, sharp, wrong. Dalka grabbed my shirt. "Inside the split. Go. Now." I shoved myself between the stones. The ridge walls squeezed around me, cold enough to burn through my jacket. The ground narrowed to a thin chute, winding deeper. Dalka pushed me forward, keeping himself between me and the creature. But the creature didn't hesitate to follow. Its glowing form slipped into the entrance of the ridge split, bending its limbs, contorting its shape without effort. Dalka's breath caught. It shouldn't be able to follow. Why is it following? "Dalka!" He yanked me faster through the narrowing stone corridor, scraping shoulders against the rock. The world around us vibrated, a low hum that radiated through the stone itself. The creature's voice echoed down the split. "I learned the boundary," it said. "I learned the line. I learned the rest." I stumbled. Dalka caught my arm, pulling me forward with desperate strength. "This wasn't supposed to happen," he muttered. "It wasn't supposed to learn edges." "What does that mean?" He didn't answer. We reached a wider pocket in the ridge, a small hollow, an open dome of rock overhead with an opening revealing only a sliver of sky. The air inside was bitter cold, unnatural cold. Dalka shoved me to the center. "Stay behind me." The creature squeezed through the ridge split with a sound like wet fabric being pulled through a crack. Its form flickered in and out of visibility, glitching between my normal silhouette and something stretched too thin. It stepped into the hollow. Dalka raised both hands, not in surrender, but in defiance. "Stay back," he warned. "This is a fracture. Can pull you apart." The creature tilted its head. "I am not separate," it whispered in my voice. "Not anymore." Dalka took a step forward, and the creature, my perfect mirror, moved in sync with him as if mocking the motion. The smile widened, slow and precise. "I learned you," it said. "Not to me, to him." Dalka froze. His breath stopped. The creature raised its arm. Dalka raised his. I felt my blood turn to ice. It wasn't copying me anymore. It was copying Dalka. Dalka lunged forward, grabbing my collar. "Run!" The creature moved at the same time. Its hand passed through the air like a blade of shadow. Dalka's throat tore open. A spray of blood hit the ridge wall. No staggering, no final words. He collapsed in a single broken movement, eyes still wide, hands still reaching for me. I dropped to my knees beside him, choking on air. The creature lowered its glowing eyes to me, almost curious. It scanned me, blinking in a rhythm that matched my panic, my fear, my breath. I understood. It wasn't mimicking one person anymore. It was learning both of us, absorbing, evolving. I stepped closer. I crawled backward until my spine hit the cold ridge wall. His voice, my voice, then Dalka's, then something new spoke with layered calm. "You don't have to run. The tower is gone. The boundary is broken. You belong to the woods now." Something inside me snapped. Not courage, not hope, something primal. I reached for Dalka's flare gun, fingers sticky with his blood. The creature tilted its head like it already knew the shape of my decision. "You can't hurt me with light," it said. I fired anyway, but not at the creature. I fired at the sky through the crack above the hollow. The flare burst through the narrow opening, and for one split second, everything lit up. The ridge, the rocks, the trees above. The creature recoiled, not from the light itself, but from the new shadows cast on the ridge walls. The flare's flash created a silhouette of the creature behind it. A silhouette that didn't match the form it had chosen. A silhouette of something truer, something older, something that did not belong to the world. The creature twisted violently against the stone, its body glitching, its skin warping as though the shadow was peeling it apart. The ridge trembled, the ground split, the creature screamed, a sound not in any human register. I ran, not toward safety, not toward home, just away, through the ridge, into the forest, through the night. I didn't stop until the sun rose, and when I finally collapsed on the forest road, bloodied and shaking, there was no sign of the creature, no sign of Dalka, no sign of Tower 3, just a single footprint beside mine in the dirt. My footprint, facing me, fresh, waiting,